Well, even amid all of the fallout from the grounding of those 737 MAX jets, including new lawsuits and continued flight cancellations, Boeing says its appetite for acquisitions will not slow down. Boeing CEO Dennis Muilenburg told Reuters, "Our ability to do deals continues to be strong. We have the financial capacity to manage the MAX situation and continue to make our investments for the future." And speaking of deals, Muilenburg also told Reuters that if there is a deal between U.S. and China, any kind of trade deal, that would likely prompt Boeing to make a big order for planes from China. Our own Scott Gamm is here to discuss. Hey, Gamm.
Hey, what's going on, guys?
Nothing. Tell us about what he said specifically. Is this a surprise? Because just yesterday on this show, we had on our colleague Alexis Keenan talking about yet another new legal challenge Boeing faces, this one from a client, a Russian jet leasing company, accusing Boeing of negligence and some other
It's the airline ACS,
charge, yes.
the leasing company.
Liability, yeah.
Right.
So how do you sort of jive this optimism from Muilenburg?
Well, I mean, CEOs are usually optimistic, especially in situations like these. What I think was interesting that Muilenburg talked about was the services business of Boeing, which we don't talk a lot about. This is where they kind of help airlines save money on costs, repair the planes. It's kind of a sort of peripheral part of the business aside from the core jet making and defense business. Now that brought in $17 billion in revenue last year. The goal is for $50 billion over the next decade, and they've been beefing up their acquisitions over the past couple of years to get to that run rate of $50 billion. Last year they acquired KLX, which is an aerospace parts maker, for over $3 billion. So to your point in your intro, Muilenburg was basically saying, hey, the financial fallout from the MAX won't necessarily hurt our ability to continue making acquisitions for the services business.
I think we should talk a bit about the China piece here, because that was just so interesting to me. There's all this pent-up demand, but then you hear Dennis Muilenburg talk about, well, we don't even know. It's so hard to gauge when a deal could be reached. What do you make of that?
Well, it's a really important point you bring up, and I think what's so striking is his optimism about China, because China was the first sort of region to ground the 737 MAX jet back in March, and analysts at the time were thinking, well, is there more to it than that? Is it because of the trade tensions between the U.S. and China that China was trying to use Boeing as sort of leverage? But then, of course, you saw a lot of other geographical regions ground the plane, leading to, of course, the FAA grounding the plane, and now it's, of course, grounded worldwide. What is interesting, though, is that 1 out of 4 of every plane Boeing made last year went to China. Yeah. So this is a huge market for them. And look, there aren't that many options, as we've talked about many times, for airlines to get planes. You have Airbus and Boeing. It's a duopoly. It's a great kind of business to be in for these companies. Yeah. And we've also made this point many times that even if an airline wanted to go to Airbus, right? It's not so easy because Airbus has a multi-year backlog for planes. So if you're, an airline and you have an aging fleet, you need to have Boeing in that discussion, right? It can't just be Airbus.
So in other words, literally nothing at this rate can slow Boeing down. Because
we'll see how much those lawsuits amount to, though.
Muilenburg does not seem to be at all concerned or worried by that at all.
Yes, and according to these reports, they're expecting the plane to be back in the air as soon as October.
Right? October. Right.
Now, no official word from the FAA.
But I just wonder, what is the psychology of the passenger when they hear you're in a 737 MAX? Because I think about that now when I'm on a plane. I flew back on an Airbus from Europe. So
yeah, I'm not worried about that so much. I think most people just, if the plane has been approved to go in the air, then good enough for them.
Well, also, it's like, clearly, according to some of these reports, perhaps there was some lapse in oversight in the initial rollout of the 737 MAX jet. So now that there's been sort of a second go-around at this, you would think that they have found all the issues, or at least you would hope.
They're being extra careful, because if they approve them to go up and then there's another crash and it's due to something with the plane, I mean, I don't know what happens then. All right,
they've had several successful ones lately, so yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.